God's word establishes faith. When I look at the wise men who by faith were filling themselves with what God was saying, it was a whole nother thing to actually be filled with what God had said and do something about it. They made a choice to do something about it. They made possibly a 4-month trip. And they were willing to do that. They were putting it to action. And this is where I want you to be encouraged as a brother or sister. I know that God has great things for you, but they will never happen until your faith gets more powerful than your will. And what happens when God's word is in you, it begins to establish faith. It keeps that faith in you. And it grows that faith stronger. And just from my own transparency and personal experience, I have found that there are many things that God has said to me, do that, and I have said, no. And I'll tell you why. Many of the things that God says to me to do, I'm like, that's scary. I don't want to do that. How then have I been able in my life to say yes to the Lord? It's been when my faith gets bigger than my fear. And I'm going to be really transparent. That is not a comfortable process to get your faith stronger than your fear. Because what happens is there's a tension between what you believe and what you're afraid of. And the more that you feed what you believe, the more that tension grows. And there's a tipping point in your life when faith becomes more powerful than your fear, when you have fed it. That's when God establishes your faith, and your faith gets stronger than your will. The more you feed your faith, the more, and I'm telling you, you will be in a natural position to always say no to God. Because it's scary, it's not in your plan, whatever. You will have that natural propensity to say, God, my ways are better, and you'll resist him. But as your faith grows, your faith begins to war against the stuff in your life that's at enmity with God. And the more that God establishes your faith, the more that your faith becomes the moving action in your life and not everything else. Until your faith is strong enough to dictate your actions, you're not at a place where you're ready to follow Christ. I just want to be real with you. If you want to follow Christ, you need a faith that's strong enough to say, I'm going to do it. And we don't start there. Don't let anybody fool you. Well, I always follow Christ. No, you don't. Come on. We're all sinners saved by grace, and we all have a tendency to say, God, my way is better. All of us. It's until that faith grows that it moves us to action. I like how Paul says it. I can't not preach the gospel. I like how Jeremiah says, he says, I was tired of the persecution. I was tired of the suffering, so I shut up God's word. I didn't let it out. And inside of me, it was like a fire. And it burned until I had to let it out. See, that's what happens with faith. God establishes it. It gets bigger and bigger and begins to take over your life. And there is nothing better.